What it do, baby? Welcome to the ATB podcast. I'm Gary with.
Kelvin.
Today we're going to be continuing our series where we evaluate each playoff contender in the NBA. Today we'll be continuing with our evaluation of the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers currently sit with the number 5 seed in the Eastern Conference with a record of 39-26. A few things I wanted to say before we get into the strengths and weaknesses of the Pacers is, first of all, the king of Nathan Davis, he lost the singing challenge to COVID, so if everybody could just pray for him in the comments below, it'd mean a lot. And basketball related, I wanted to say that, it's just super exciting, I know for both of us, just to see, and for a lot of people, the games are back. Scrimmage just started today.
Yep.
It's really awesome, so make sure y'all are keeping up with that, because a lot of the starters are playing in those scrimmage games.
And the coaches are experimenting with a lot of different strategies and lineups, as seen today with the Nuggets.
5 centers. That's crazy.
Yep.
Mike Mullen's been playing a little too much my team, but
Rest in peace, Houston Rockets, if they ever go against each other.
Yeah, that wouldn't end well. But going with the Pacers, we'll start with their advantages, and the first advantage, in my opinion, is their coach. In our very first video on this channel, I said that Nate McMillan was my coach of the year all the way back in April, and I still believe that he is a top coach in the NBA. He's consistently shown with the injuries of his best players, such as Victor Oladipo, Malcolm Brogdon, Miles Turner, in past years, that he's able to get it done with really whatever lineup. They get several new bench pieces every year, and he still is able to consistently get them to a mid to high seed in the Eastern Conference. So I just think he's done a great job as their coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And, playing with a pretty new lineup with a lot of new players, it takes a really good coach to be able to put a group of players who haven't played with each other much, together and be able to, at least be, at least make the playoffs. So, just props to Nate McMillan for that.
Definitely.
So to start off with the Indiana Pacers, they have a 108.3 defensive rating, which is 7th in the league, and a 110.3 offensive rating, which is 18th in the league. So their first strength for me is their defense, obviously, with them having the 7th best defensive rating, and I think their defensive anchor is Miles Turner, who's obviously really young, but he's already one of the best rim protectors in today's game, in my opinion. And it shows up in their stats, defended field goal percentage at the rim, which is 4th best in the league at just 58.3%. And they also have really good perimeter defenders, such as Malcolm Brogdon. Like even someone like TJ Warren has. And by the way, I just want to talk about TJ Warren for a little bit. He's really taken like a large step up from his days when he was playing on the Suns. And the biggest thing to me is his 3-point shooting, which he's definitely like an above average shooter, shooting at I think almost 40%, 38%, yeah. And just because in the past years he shot sub 30%, I'm pretty sure.
2 years.
So just seeing him take such a big leap in his shooting has really helped out the Pacers. And also, he's always been a pretty good scorer. Just adding that 3-point shot has really helped them, lead the Pacers in terms of scoring.
For sure. I think another thing that kind of goes with what makes Nate McMillan such a good coach is that he gets a lot of help from his players. Each year they have a different guy step up and fill the role of when their stars get hurt, because the last 2-3 years, even with Paul George, it seems like their stars always getting hurt. Last year it was Bogdanovic, who averaged 20 a game, and this year it's been TJ Warren, he's actually their leading scorer with just about 19 points per game. So he's taken a huge step. It's not easy going from someone who plays with someone as ball dominant as Devin Booker to go to a new team with a completely different lineup and just be the number one guy immediately when you get there. So huge props to him. And another thing I wanted to talk about, going to the three ball for the Pacers, their starters do not shoot the 3 ball tremendously. TJ Warren, Malcolm Brogdon, Miles Turner, and Jeremy Lamb, when he started before he got injured, all shot above 31% from 3, which isn't bad, but it's definitely subpar for a starting lineup. But their bench shoots the 3 extremely well. Justin Holiday shoots 42%, Aaron Holiday 39%, and Doug McDermott 45% from 3, which is absolutely ridiculous. Not to mention TJ McConnell, who is the prototypical backup point guard in my opinion. He's a little bit undersized, but he plays great defense. He's a great hustler. So I'm really high on the Pacers bench. Not so much with their big men, but their backup 1, 2, and 3. They have great shooters and a great distributor and hustle player in TJ McConnell. So their bench is definitely a big strength for me.
Yeah, definitely, and I agree. Having a bench that shoots so well can really open up like a lot of different lineups, and shooters in today's game can fit in anywhere on any team. So just having three really good shooters off your bench has really helped them out this season. And as I wanted to talk about like all of their players as a whole, as you were saying, they each year it seems like the Pacers has a different player step up each time. And this season it's no different, but it seems like this season like everyone's been stepping up. Domantas Sabonis is first-time All-Star, and though he doesn't lead his team in scoring, he's taken a step up from last year in terms of scoring, and just being in the starting lineup now and playing so many minutes, has really like unlocked his potential. And though I don't see him being a superstar, but he's already an all-star, and that's already really good. He's a tremendous rebounder, and that's averaging 12 rebounds a game and 3 offensive rebounds. So he's just a very good rebounder. Also, he's showing flashes of being a really good passer, just like his dad. And he's averaging 5 assists, and I'm not saying he's gonna be his dad, because I don't think he's there in terms of playmaking, but he's definitely got some of that vision that you could really see in his dad in his Portland days.
Definitely. One thing that reminds me a lot of his dad is just how unique they both were, because Arvydas could shoot the ball extremely well, which Domantas can't do quite yet, but Arvydas was kind of like the first ever stretch 5. A lot of people like to say that Dirk revolutionized the stretch big, which he did, but there were bigs before him that shot the 3 ball extremely well, and Sabonis was one of those guys. And now Domantas is following in his footsteps. Like you said, 5 assists per game is extremely good for a big man, and also he's one of the best low post players in the league. And in a league where the low post isn't prominent, he's still able to go out and give you great spin moves. He's got good footwork, good hands. He can handle the ball.
Very good touch around the rim.
Yeah, definitely. He's got, like you're saying, just great touch. And that's another thing that I wanted to talk about, was how versatile they are in the pick and roll. Because when you have guys like Malcolm Brogdon and Victor Oladipo as your guards, of course, Victor Oladipo hasn't played much this season, but this is expecting him to come back almost to where he was. But even with Malcolm Brogdon, him and Domantas Sabonis have great chemistry, because Sabonis is one of the best roll men in the league. He's not always going to go up for the dunks, but he definitely can. And he's got great touch. He can hit hook shots, mid-ranges, post-up moves if you need him to back him down. And also you have Miles Turner. When you're running the pick and roll with him, you get a lob threat and you get a 3-point shooter. So if you want to pick and roll, you can go to Sabonis. If you want to pick and fade, you can go to Turner. So they have so many things that they can do with their pick and roll, and they can get really creative with it, which I think is a really, really big advantage for them.
Yeah, so aside from Domantas Sabonis, they've also had a lot of other players step up, such as as already mentioned, TJ Warren, and Malcolm Brogdon has really filled his role on the team. And I know he kind of slowed down during the second half of the season, but in the beginning he was playing really well. He was averaging like 18 points with like 8 assists, and shooting really efficiently. But I know later on in the season his efficiency kind of dipped, because he was taking a lot more shots than he's used to. But still he's the leading guy in assists on the Pacers, and that's another strength of the Pacers. They have give me 1 second. Okay. Yeah, they have really good playmakers, such as Malcolm Brogdon, and off the bench, you have TJ McConnell, and Sabonis is also a very good passer for a big man, which has all led to them having the 6th most assists per game in the league. Definitely. So, and also I think though Malcolm Brogdon is only shooting 31% from 3 and 44 from the field, I think his efficiency is just dragged down by some shots that he wouldn't usually take. It's just he's been forced to take a larger scoring role on the team. So I think once he gets a better feel of his role, his efficiency will definitely get up again. As we know, he's a very good 3-point shooter, as he's shown on the Bucks. So I definitely think he can bring his efficiency up to maybe like a 38% 3-point shooter on like 4 or 5 attempts.
Yeah, for sure. I think, like you said, he's had a bigger role. Not to mention he's been playing hurt as well. He's missed about 20 games this season, and that's not even counting all the games where he's played hurt because they've needed him to play. With the injuries of Jeremy Lamb and Victor Oladipo, guys like that. So he's definitely just had to take a big role. He went from the third or fourth option in Milwaukee to now having to be the number 1 or 2 guy on offense and your go-to guy in crunch time.
Yep.
So he's definitely had to take a bigger role, but I think he's done overall a good job with that. And that's what I wanted to talk about. My last big advantage for the Pacers, and I don't even know if it's not an advantage right now. It's more of a potential question, but I'm wondering just how good that potential starting lineup could be when completely healthy with Brogdon, Oladipo, Warren, Sabonis, and Turner. They've only played 5 games together, which is crazy. Or at least Victor Oladipo and Malcolm Brogdon have only played 5 games together. So if those guys can get playing together, start practicing together, hopefully they've spent this time in Orlando playing together, try to get some chemistry. You have a great catch and shoot guy with Warren who can also play in the pick and roll. We've talked about how versatile Brogdon, Sabonis, and Turner are. And if Victor Oladipo even comes back 70% from what he was, you're giving yourself one of the most clutch players in the league and an absolute beast on both sides of the ball. This backcourt could be extremely scary on both sides of the ball. I could see them as being kind of like a Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, where they're both kind of undersized guards, except they play on both ends of the floor. Obviously, neither of them are as good as Dame, but you get the point. Great defenders, great in the pick and roll, great shooters. This backcourt could be scary. If not this season, definitely next season if they stay healthy.
Yeah, so I definitely think, and we'll talk more on this a little bit later, but Victor Oladipo is the X factor for this team coming to the playoffs, because I think we can all agree that if Oladipo doesn't play well, like if he plays like he played in the regular season, then I don't think the Pacers will be able to leave the first round. So I think it just all depends on how Victor Oladipo does, and their top lineups are already really good, especially on the defensive end, where their most played lineup of Jeremy Lamb, TJ Warren, Miles Turner, Domantas Sabonis, and Malcolm Brogdon, which I believe is their usual starting lineup, has a 99.2 defensive rating, which is would make it like the best defensive rating in the league if the whole team had that. But where they struggle is offensively, and as we know, not only is Victor Oladipo one of the best perimeter defenders in the league when healthy, but he also, when healthy, averages more than 20 points per game. So I think he's gonna be the X factor, because right now no one on the team is really an offensive centerpiece. I mean, you have Domantas Sabonis, TJ Warren, Malcolm Brogdon, and those 3 guys, they can all fill their role on offense, but none of them are going to lead you far into the playoffs just because of their offense. They're just not good enough to be an offensive centerpiece for a contender. And the only person, the only person I really see being able to fill that role is Victor Oladipo. And if he doesn't step up for the Pacers in the playoffs, well, they're just going to struggle like they did with him in the regular season.
Yeah, in the year where Victor Oladipo first got traded to Indiana, this is a guy, he averaged 23, 2.5 steals a game, 5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, and he shot the 3 ball at 37%. So we weren't just talking like all-star, we were talking top 15 player in the league. Not to mention he took LeBron to 7 games. And almost, maybe would have won that series if it wasn't for a game winner in one of those games. So ever since then, he's been riddled with injuries. Jeremy Lamb's injured. Injuries is a big problem for this team. So if you want, I can just go straight into the weaknesses unless you have another strength.
Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about some of their other players real quick. So as I was saying earlier, with how older players are stepping up, I quickly wanted to mention Aaron Holiday and Justin Holiday, the 2 Holiday brothers. They've both been stepping up this season. With Aaron Holiday, I think it's a sophomore season, and he's already like one of their best bench guys, averaging 9 points and 3 assists, and just being like a much needed shot creator off their bench. And Justin Holiday has become a very good shooter, and he's also a pretty solid defender as well. So just any 3-and-D guy from the wing is very valuable in today's game. And there's two particular guys I wanted to talk about real quick, and that's Domantas Sabonis and Miles Turner. I think I don't think this gets talked about enough, but at the beginning of the season, I think a lot of people thought that one of those guys were going to be traded, because I don't think anyone thought that, or at least like it would work out too well.
Yeah.
In a way, because first of all, Domantas Sabonis was always kind of regarded as like a below average defender, and also he couldn't space the floor too well. And Miles Turner is a pretty inconsistent shooter and still is. And aside from that, just those two guys playing together, I guess people thought there wasn't going to be enough spacing. Maybe they were going to clog up the paint. But this season has really proved that they can coexist, though I don't think they're going to reach their full potential playing with each other. But I think that they can coexist, and Domantas Sabonis has been a much better defender than I think most people thought, and I kind of regard him as a slight positive on defense now. So him and Miles Turner, though they don't offer the best spacing, they can coexist, and it's proven to be somewhat successful this season.
Yeah, they have all the intangibles to be a great front court in the NBA. And they've played, like you said, they've played well together. A lot of people, especially, including me, I thought they were going to break this up and try to get maybe another guard, kind of like an insurance policy for Victor Oladipo, kind of like another kind of guy. You can move Sabonis to the 5, maybe get another power forward or something like that. Yeah. But, at the end of the day, they still have the 5 seed in the East without their best player. So they've definitely proved that they can make it work. If Sabonis can get a 3-point shot, I think you could probably be looking at like a top 8 front court in the league if they're not already, and they're already in the top half of the league when it comes to front courts.
Yeah.
So that's all the strengths I have for the Pacers.
Yep. So to move on to the weaknesses, firstly, of course, they're simply just not very good offensively. They're 18th in offensive rating, and though they have decent shooting off the bench, it's very inconsistent. They have a lot of inconsistent shooters like Miles Turner. Domantas Sabonis doesn't really stretch the floor too well. Malcolm Brogdon has been in a shooting slump for a while. Jeremy Lamb is shooting 33%, which is just like a little bit below average, I think. Victor Oladipo is only shooting 30%, and outside from the Holiday brothers and Doug McDermott, you have like TJ McConnell, who only shoots 33% on not even on 0.2 attempts a game. So just aside from like 4 really good shooters, the rest of the guys are either really inconsistent or just not good shooters. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's a 3-point shooting league, and if your entire team, for the most part, can't shoot threes, you're just not going to be too successful in the postseason, unless you have like a 16-foot player on your team, which only the Bucks have. So
Oh, sorry. I wanted to add this in real quick, but they're actually last in 3-point attempts per game at 27.5. Okay. Yeah. And like we all know how like some of the best teams in the league shoot a lot of threes. Like we all know, like Houston Rockets, I believe they average 44 threes attempted per game, and Pacers are like half of that. So just to get some perspective on how little of the amount of threes they shoot.
And I think that goes also to what we were saying with Sabonis and Turner with the spacing, is that they aren't shooting a lot because one of their best players is a low post guy. So I think that definitely plays into it. And like I was saying, unless you have a 16-footer, you're not going to be able to really go far in the playoffs without a 3-point shooter. And, of course, nobody's 16 feet tall. But so going into another weakness for them, and this is really the only big weakness for me with the Pacers, and it's just depth. I mean, honestly, I understand they have, like I was saying earlier, a nice backup point guard, really nice backup guards and wings. But first of all, like, who do you have as my backup, or who do you have if you're the Pacers as your backup 4 or 5? And I understand Goga I don't even know how to pronounce it, but Bidatse, I believe, Goga Bidatse. He's a nice up-and-coming player. He could definitely be good in the future, but he's not there yet. TJ Leaf's just, he's okay. He can shoot the ball decently. But after that, I mean, you don't have any backup bigs. And to be honest, you want to have a nice lob finisher off your bench. Most teams have a really nice lob finisher off their bench, and I just don't see that with one of those guys. I think Badatse could be a really nice player in the future, but right now I think they don't have much big man depth. Not to mention all their injuries. So when you combine that with their injuries at the 2 guard, especially with Oladipo and Jeremy Lamb, and your lack of depth already at the 4 and the 5, you're good at the wing position. But after that, I just their depth really concerns me, especially since their best player is always getting hurt. And at the end of the day, you can only be so good without your best player. And if Victor Oladipo can't stay healthy, I just can't see them making a deep playoff run.
Yep. And that's what I was saying earlier. Victor Oladipo is definitely the X factor for this team, and how far they go really depends on how well he does. But just with how competitive the playoffs are this season, it's really hard to see them even maybe I can make a case for them making the conference finals, but it's a stretch.
Yeah, it's definitely a stretch. Yeah. That's fully healthy with everybody playing to their fullest potential,
Yeah. But I guess it's just the top 4 seeds in the Eastern Conference are so good that I don't feel like the Pacers, just in terms of of course they're very talented, but they just need another piece or two, especially as you were saying, the 4 or 5, because Goga and Bidatse he's just too young. He's a rookie, and he's still getting adjusted to the NBA, and I just don't see him being viable in the playoffs. And when you basically don't have a backup big, you're gonna have to play either your bigs a lot of minutes, which will tire them out in a playoff series, or you're gonna have to play some of your younger guys who are pretty inexperienced. And in the playoffs, where teams are probably going to match upon them a little more than usual, they're going to get picked on, especially in the pick and roll.
Yeah, definitely. We saw it last year, good regular season team, and then they get swept in the first round. Of course, they didn't have Oladipo, but I think it's more or less the same with the Pacers. Just they kind of remind me, they're kind of like the Thunder and the Heat in the sense that, they have a star, except their star is hurt, and that's where they differ from those two teams, because the Thunder and the Heat not only have more depth, but they're also a better shooting team, and they have a bona fide leader. But with the Pacers, their leader's not able to stay healthy. So I think at the end of the day, I could see the Thunder or the Heat making the second round, or maybe even a conference final if something crazy happened. I can't see the Pacers making it out of the first round with all the injuries. They're 26th in rebounding, 22nd in steals. They're in the bottom half of the league in fast break points as well. We've said this a ton. The game is condensed in the playoffs. You got to be able to get easy buckets, and they just don't do that, especially with a guy who gave you 2 steals a game not being there. So at the end of the day, I mean, it's really just as simple as your star player is hurt, and that just completely tarnishes, any playoff hopes. Of course, if Oladipo can come back in Orlando and play like he used to, that could be a completely different story.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So just I think the worst scenario is that Victor Oladipo doesn't come back. Maybe he's 50%, and the team, in the playoffs, teams are definitely gonna dare them to shoot, especially some of their more inconsistent shooters. And they take the least amount of threes in the game. And nowadays, you just can't win if you're not, if you're not taking a lot of threes. You're simply just gonna get outscored. And nowadays, when you have your second best player, or arguably your second or third best player, be mainly a post scorer and a rebounder, he's not gonna. Nowadays, that just doesn't work. You're gonna need a lot of shooters, and just if they were a better shooting team, I can make a case for them making it maybe okay. So let me just say the best case scenario first. The best case scenario is Victor Oladipo comes back to his usual superstar self, and with the extra scoring punch, they can really rival other teams, because they already have a really good defense, and Victor Oladipo is going to help them on both ends. So let's just say their defense gets an upgrade. Let's just say they're 6 on defense instead of 8, and then Victor Oladipo comes back scoring 25 a game, and they're suddenly top 10 in offensive rating. Then I can see a case for them making it definitely past the first round. But
that's just a lot of ifs,
Yeah, it's just a lot of ifs. it's just a what if scenario for the Pacers to me. It's like, you know, they have potential, but their ceiling just isn't very high this year.
Yeah.
And I'm more comfortable with putting them as like somewhat of a contender if they could just get that bona fide star. You know, if Oladipo could be that, but I still feel like they need another piece, maybe a better center or a better bench. So
definitely, I think that, and they have a lot of tough decisions this offseason. Do you want to trade Sabonis before you have to give him all that money? Do you want to give it another season to see how his 3-point shot develops? Because if he can get a 3-point shot, he'll be one of the best in the league. Do you trade Miles Turner? He really hasn't. His game hasn't evolved all that much since he was drafted, despite his, except for his 3-point shot and his rim protection. They have a lot of questions to answer this offseason, and I agree with you. I think they're a first-round team this year.
Yep. So that concludes our Pacers analysis. If you enjoyed this episode, go check out some of our other episodes down in the channel below. And as always, if you have any feedback, we'd love to hear it, and we will try to respond to as many comments as we can. And as always, have a good one.
See ya.